Okay, so we're going to be talking about sample-based synthesis, and we're going to use this to create a cello using the NNXT advanced sampler within Reason. Right, so far we have one single sample loaded up, which is a B2 note played by a cello. I'll have a quick listen to that. Okay, and I'm sure you noticed that it cut off quite sharply at the end. That's because the sample we have doesn't actually have a release portion of its envelope, just the attack, decay and sustain. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a very small loop within the sample, so that when we hold down a key it can sustain infinitely and it sounds quite organic as well. So as it stands, we currently are in forward play mode down here. So again, I'll just play that again. Right, so what we want to do is change that to forward loop mode. So what that's going to do is going to play our sample forward, and then after it's played from start to finish, it's then going to start looping, and it's going to loop based on these two parameters here, the loop start and loop end. Right, these are currently set to 43.2% and 100%, so that means that the loop is going to start 43.2% of the way through the original sample, which will skip over the attack and decay portions. So we'll have a little listen to that now. Okay, so that can sustain as long as I have my finger on the keys. Right, we can have a little fiddle with this as well. We can see how it affects the playback. Alright, now you can hear that kind of the spike in volume there, which means that the loop needs to start a little bit later, because there's a volume jump when the loop starts, but it's still, the sample's still within its attack or decay portions. So what we need to do is we'll set that again to, it was about 43.2 we had it, and that gives us our, that means that the range of the loop is entirely within the sustain portion of our sample. Now again, we'll just have a little listen. Right, so that's great, so there's no clicks or pops or any sounds like that. Right, what we can also do with our one sample is we can actually create a range of notes just using that one sample. And the way we do that is we select our one note here and we extend the range down here using the low key and high key, so we can stretch that up and down a little bit, so we can see a representation here of how many keys we're going to be pitch shifting over. So we'll have a little listen there. So that means that we can play various different notes but only actually have one sample loaded, which is great because it minimizes the stress on the computer. This, however, does have its limits. Like if we stretch this up very far, quite a lot up, we can have a little listen to some of the very high notes. And they sound quite unnatural there, and you can audibly hear that the sample is looping back on itself. So there is limits to this kind of pitch shifting technology here. So what we can do though is we can pull this down and we can load in various other samples of different notes, which we'll do just up here. Load in a C1 for example. Okay, you can pull this range down. And that means we've got two notes pitch shifting over slightly smaller ranges, which should hopefully keep the whole thing sounding a little more organic. So what we can do to further enhance the quality of our cello here is to add in more and more samples down here of different notes played on the cello, so that each of them are only being pitch shifted across very small ranges. Alright, and we'll do a Blue Peter moment here. So one we prepared earlier. Right, and as we can see, there's quite a lot of notes here which are pitch shifted across quite small ranges, and this will minimize any artifacts or any kind of unnatural sounds which we saw earlier when we're pitch shifting a note too far and too hard. And the more notes that we choose to sample individually, the more likely we are to recreate that natural timbre from the instrument itself. Like if we try and recreate one instrument just using one sample, we're quickly going to reach the limits of how far we can pitch shift something without it becoming an unnatural sound.